What if the retirement number you are chasing is actually keeping you trapped in a life you do not want? We live in a world that conditions us to believe that success is defined by a constantly expanding pile of money. We are taught to look at the billionaires, the influencers, and the luxury lifestyles broadcasted across every screen, and we internalize the idea that wealth is synonymous with excess. But there is a quiet revolution happening among people who have realized that the traditional narrative of working tirelessly until age 65 is a broken promise. They understand that the ultimate goal is not to accumulate the largest possible number in a brokerage account before you die. The goal is to calculate a very specific mathematical threshold that allows you to buy back the rest of your life. This threshold is often called the freedom number. When most people think about a retirement number, they pull a figure out of thin air. $5 million, $10 million. They pick these massive, intimidating numbers because they equate wealth with an endless parade of luxury cars, sprawling estates, and first-class flights. Because the number is so unfathomably large, the pursuit of it dictates every major life decision they make. They take jobs they hate because the salary is higher. They sacrifice their weekends, their physical health, and their presence in the lives of their loved ones because they are convinced they need just a little more before they can finally rest. The tragic irony is that by chasing a number designed to buy them a perfect future, they completely bankrupt their present. They treat time as an infinite resource and money as a scarce one, when the exact opposite is the mathematical reality of human existence. To understand the life philosophy behind the freedom number, we first have to deconstruct what money actually is. Money is not a scoreboard. Money is stored energy. It is a highly efficient battery that captures the hours of labor you have expended so that you can deploy them later. Every time you spend money, you are trading a piece of your past effort. Every time you save and invest money, you are buying a piece of your future time. The problem arises when we use this stored energy to purchase social status rather than personal autonomy. We drain our batteries buying depreciating assets to signal our value to strangers, rather than hoarding that energy to permanently fund our own independence. This is the fundamental error in the modern approach to personal finance. We are using the most powerful tool ever invented to build golden cages instead of buying the key to the door. The philosophy of the freedom number flips this paradigm completely upside down. It requires you to sit down and ruthlessly examine what actually brings you joy, contentment, and peace of mind. It strips away the marketing messages and the societal expectations. When you do this honest accounting, you usually find that the things that make a life rich, long walks, deep conversations, unhurried mornings, and good health cost very little money. Once you divorce your baseline happiness from consumerism, you begin to see that your actual living expenses are far lower than society insists they should be. And when your living expenses drop, the mathematical finish line of your freedom number plummets right alongside them. You realize that you do not need $10 million to be free. You just need enough to sustain a life of quiet dignity and absolute control over your calendar. Here is the harsh truth. The vast majority of people are not working to fund their true desires. They are working to service their social debt. They are trading the most vibrant, capable years of their lives to maintain a lifestyle that looks successful from the outside but feels suffocating on the inside. The freedom number is the antidote to this existential trap. It is a precise, mathematically sound calculation that tells you exactly when you have won the game of capitalism. It provides a definitive point where you can stop running on the treadmill, step off the machine entirely, and look around. It shifts your primary metric of success from how much you earn to how much of your day you actually control. Because at the end of it all, the most profound realization you can have is that true wealth is not about what you can buy. True wealth is the ability to wake up every single morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. To understand how this plays out in reality, we need to look at two different people. Let's start with Arthur, a senior executive pulling in $400,000 a year. From the outside, he's the picture of success. He drives a brand new luxury SUV, wears custom suits, and lives in a massive house in an exclusive neighborhood. People see someone who has made it to the absolute top, but the reality of Arthur's situation is entirely different. He's deeply entrenched in the status game. Every raise means an immediate lifestyle upgrade. His massive house has an equally massive mortgage, and his luxury car lease drains over $1,000 monthly. He maintains expensive country club memberships and a taste for fine dining that swallows his disposable income entirely. Here's the harsh truth. Arthur is broke at a higher level. Despite earning nearly $500,000 annually, his savings rate is practically zero. He's consumed by social debt, spending money to maintain an image for people he doesn't even like. He tells himself he just needs $10 million to relax, but his bloated expenses push that finish line further away every single day. Because of this, Arthur is a prisoner to his lifestyle. He wakes up at 5 in the morning, sits in grueling traffic, and works 12-hour days in a high-stress environment. His health is deteriorating, and he rarely sees his children awake. He's trading the most valuable years of his life just to keep the lights on in a mansion he barely enjoys. He looks rich, but he's fundamentally unfree. Now, let's look at a completely different approach to life. Meet Elena. Elena is a mid-level manager at a logistics company, earning about $80,000 a year. From the outside, Elena's life looks incredibly ordinary. She lives in a modest townhouse she bought a decade ago. She drives a reliable, 7-year-old sedan that's been fully paid off for years. She doesn't wear designer clothes, and her vacations are quiet road trips. If you stood Arthur and Elena next to each other, society would immediately declare Arthur the winner. But wealth is what you don't see. While Arthur was busy upgrading his lifestyle to impress the world, Elena was quietly and methodically funneling a huge portion of her income into low-cost index funds. She understood early on that her income wasn't meant to buy things, it was meant to buy her future independence. Elena never bought into the illusion that a bigger house would make her happier. Instead of inflating her lifestyle, she kept her living expenses extremely low. This created a massive gap between what she earned and what she spent. She took every spare dollar and threw it into the stock market, letting the sheer power of compound interest do the heavy lifting. She wasn't aiming for $10 million, she just wanted enough to cover her modest life. By her late 30s, Elena reached a specific mathematical milestone. Because her living expenses were so low, her investments were enough to sustain her without a grueling full-time job. She didn't quit entirely, but she negotiated a shorter work week and stepped into a low-stress role. She traded a maximum salary for maximum time freedom. Today, Elena spends her mornings reading on her porch, her afternoons hiking with her dogs, and her evenings cooking meals from scratch with her family. She sleeps 8 hours a night and has virtually zero financial stress. Arthur has the fancy title and the shiny objects, but he wakes up every day with a knot of anxiety in his stomach, dreading a job he can't afford to lose. Elena has absolute peace of mind. The difference between Arthur and Elena isn't their income. The difference is how they define the purpose of their money. Arthur buys status, which traps him. Elena bought autonomy, which liberated her. She achieved this not through luck, but through a simple, mathematical formula anyone can apply. To understand her escape route, we have to look closely at the foundational math of financial independence. Let's look at the societal script that keeps most people paralyzed. We're constantly told that to retire safely, we need an astronomical amount of money. Financial planners and talking heads on television throw around numbers like $5 million or $10 million. For the average person, these numbers are so impossibly large that they cause instant fatigue. If you believe you need $10 million to be free and you're only saving $5,000 a year, your brain simply gives up. You accept that you'll work until you die, so you might as well spend what you have today. But there's a mathematical reality that shatters this illusion entirely. True financial independence isn't based on an arbitrary mountain of gold. It's based entirely on cash flow and a concept known as the safe withdrawal rate. Financial researchers discovered decades ago that if you invest your money in a broadly diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds, you can safely withdraw 4% of that portfolio every single year, adjusting for inflation, and practically never run out of money. This is the foundation of the 4% rule, and it flips the entire concept of wealth on its head. Instead of guessing how much you need, you simply take your annual living expenses and multiply them by 25. That's your actual freedom number. To see how powerful this is, we have to look at how two different people interpret this math. Enter Mark and Sarah. Both of them earn exactly $100,000 a year. Mark subscribes to the societal script. He spends $90,000 a year on a bloated lifestyle and saves the remaining $10,000. Because his expenses are so high, his freedom number is 90,000 multiplied by 25, which is $2.25 million. Saving only $10,000 a year, Mark looks at that mountain and feels completely defeated. He decides it's impossible, stops trying, and finances a new truck instead. Sarah looks at the exact same income differently. She optimizes her life and realizes she's perfectly happy living on $40,000 a year. She saves the remaining $60,000. Because her expenses are $40,000, her freedom number is exactly $1 million. The math doesn't lie. Sarah is aiming for a target that's less than half the size of Mark's, and she's moving toward it 6 times faster. Thanks to the power of compound interest, Sarah will reach her $1 million freedom number in less than 12 years. Mark will literally never reach his. This is the profound mindset shift that happens when you understand the multiple of 25. Your freedom number is tied to your expenses, not your income. Every time you permanently lower your living expenses, you permanently lower the amount of money you need to buy back your life. When you view the world through this mathematical lens, every financial decision takes on a completely new meaning. Let's say you're tempted to take on a new car loan that costs $1,000 a month. That's $12,000 a year in new expenses. Under the 4% rule, adding $12,000 to your annual lifestyle means you have to add $300,000 to your freedom number. You have to ask yourself a very serious question. Is driving a slightly newer car worth staying at a job you hate long enough to save an additional $300,000? Almost always, the answer is a resounding no. When you realize that every luxury you add to your baseline pushes your freedom further into the future, the desire for those luxuries simply fades away. You stop looking at price tags in terms of dollars, and you start looking at them in terms of time. You begin to understand that keeping your expenses low is the ultimate cheat code to the capitalist system. You don't need to invent the next big tech company or win the lottery to escape the rat race. You just need to understand the baseline mathematics of survival versus excess. Society teaches us a very specific and dangerous lie about passive income. We are conditioned to believe that living off your investments is a luxury reserved entirely for trust fund babies, tech billionaires, and the ultra-wealthy. The societal script says that for a normal person, work is a mandatory daily sentence that lasts from your early 20s until your body finally gives out in your late 60s. We are told that the best we can hope for is to save a little bit along the way, maybe enjoy a 2-week vacation once a year, and eventually rely on a tiny pension or government assistance when we are too tired to keep going. But there is a specific, measurable milestone in the journey of wealth building that shatters this bleak narrative. It is a moment of pure mathematical magic, and it is called the crossover point. This is not a vague feeling or an empty motivational concept. It is a highly precise calculation that represents the ultimate shift in power between you and the economy. What exactly is the crossover point? It is the precise moment when the silent, invisible yield of your invested capital finally grows large enough to completely eclipse the total cost of your baseline lifestyle. It is the day the lines on your personal financial graph intersect, meaning your money is now generating more life energy than your physical labor requires. Let's break down the mathematical reality of this milestone slowly, so you can truly visualize it. Imagine you have ruthlessly optimized your life, and your baseline living expenses are $4,000 a month. This covers your housing, your food, your transportation, and your basic human needs. Over the course of 12 months, you need $48,000 a year to maintain your existence. Now, imagine you have been quietly and diligently saving your money in a diversified portfolio of index funds over the past decade or two. You ignored the flashy cars and the expensive watches, and instead, you bought your own freedom. Your portfolio eventually reaches $1.2 million. If we apply the 4% rule we discussed earlier, we can calculate the safe, sustainable income that portfolio generates. 4% of $1.2 million is exactly $48,000 a year. At this exact moment, you have reached the crossover point. the math doesn't lie. Your portfolio is now producing $48,000 a year in passive growth and dividends, which perfectly covers your $48,000 a year in living expenses. Your money is now working exactly as hard as you do, and it never needs to sleep, take a vacation, or call in sick. This realization triggers a profound mindset shift. Once you cross this mathematical threshold, the entire structure of your reality changes. Every single dollar you earn from your physical labor from that day forward is entirely optional. You are no longer working for survival. You are no longer trading your irreplaceable time just to keep a roof over your head. You are working strictly by choice. Most of us spend our entire adult lives trapped in a brutal cycle of trading time for money. We give our employers the best, most energetic hours of our day, and in return, they give us just enough currency to repeat the exact same cycle tomorrow. It is a system designed to keep us tired, dependent, and constantly consuming. But when you hit the crossover point, that power dynamic fundamentally flips. You are no longer a dependent in the economic machine. You become a sovereign individual. You have permanently bought back your autonomy. If your boss becomes toxic, you can simply walk away. If you want to spend 6 months hiking the mountains or writing a book, you can do it without a single ounce of financial panic. Society desperately wants you to believe that this level of freedom is impossible. The system needs you to keep playing the endless status game, constantly inflating your lifestyle so that your baseline expenses always stay just out of reach of your investment yields. They want your lines to never intersect. But wealth is what you don't see. The crossover point is entirely accessible to anyone willing to keep their expenses low and let compound interest do the heavy lifting. It is not about earning millions of dollars a year. It is simply about understanding the math, lowering the denominator, and quietly walking away from the game everyone else is losing. Society teaches us that preparing for our future requires a relentless and lifelong sacrifice. We are told that saving for retirement is a grueling marathon that begins on our very first day of work and does not end until we are officially old. Under this script, every single paycheck you earn must be aggressively taxed by your future self. You are expected to set aside 15 or 20% of your income every month for 4 straight decades. This widespread belief creates an underlying sense of endless fatigue, forcing people to constantly delay gratification, because they feel like they can never take their foot off the gas pedal. But there is a mathematical escape hatch hidden inside the mechanics of compound interest, and it is known as the Coast-FI paradigm. Coast-FI stands for Coasting to Financial Independence. It represents the exact point in time where you have accumulated enough money early in life that you never need to invest another dime into your retirement accounts ever again. Let us break down the mathematical reality of how this works. Imagine a person named David. David is 30 years old and has managed to invest $150,000 into a standard portfolio of index funds. He has calculated his ultimate freedom number based on his basic living expenses and determines that he needs exactly $1.2 million to fully retire by the age of 60. If you view this through the lens of the traditional societal script, David is barely scratching the surface. It looks like he has 30 more years of aggressive saving ahead of him just to cross the finish line. He should be stressed, anxious, and perfectly willing to sacrifice his current happiness for future security. But the math doesn't lie, and it tells a radically different story. If David simply leaves that initial money alone in the stock market, it will be subjected to the massive gravitational pull of compound interest. Historically, a broadly diversified investment portfolio doubles in actual purchasing power roughly every 10 years, even after accounting for the silent, persistent drain of inflation. Let us track that single sum of money over time, assuming David never adds another penny to his investment accounts. By the time he turns 40, his original amount doubles to $300,000. By the time he reaches 50, it doubles again to $600,000. And by the time he celebrates his 60th birthday, it doubles a third time to exactly $1.2 million. This is the absolute magic of the Coast-FI milestone. At 30 years old, David has already fully funded his traditional retirement. Without realizing it, his past self has successfully purchased his future freedom. The heavy lifting is completely finished decades before he actually needs to start drawing down the money. The mindset shift that follows this mathematical realization is absolutely staggering. Once you understand that you have hit your coasting number, the intense psychological pressure to hoard your money completely vanishes. If David was previously saving $2,000 a month, hitting this milestone means he just gave himself an immediate and massive raise to use in his daily life today. Even more powerfully, he can choose to radically change how he earns his money from this day forward. Because he no longer needs to save for the distant future, he could easily leave his high-stress corporate job and take a much easier, lower-paying position. He only needs to earn enough money to cover his current baseline living expenses. Coasting allows you to reclaim decades of your youth that would otherwise be entirely lost to the corporate grind. It perfectly bridges the gap between the painful accumulation phase and the ultimate freedom of full retirement. Wealth is what you don't see, and in this specific case, wealth is the invisible engine of compound interest quietly buying back the best years of your life, while you are still young and healthy enough to actually enjoy them. Society tells us that success is permanently tied to geography. We're convinced that to be truly important, we must live in a bustling metropolis. We flock to places like New York, London, or San Francisco. We accept exorbitant rent, astronomical property taxes, and inflated daily costs as the mandatory entry fee for a successful life. We chain ourselves to high-cost economic hubs because we believe the proximity to power and high salaries will eventually set us free. But this geographic trap creates a brutal and exhausting cycle. You earn a high income, but every single dollar is immediately absorbed by your zip code. Your massive salary is an absolute mirage. You feel successful because your paycheck is physically large, but you feel broke because your bank account is constantly drained by the sheer cost of your environment. You are running on a treadmill as fast as you can just to stay exactly where you are. There is a powerful mathematical lever you can pull to completely disrupt this cycle. It is called geographic arbitrage. It is the simple but life-changing act of earning your money in a strong economy while spending it in a significantly cheaper one. It is the ultimate strategy for moving the mathematical goalposts of your freedom number entirely in your favor. Remember the multiple of 25 from the 4% rule we discussed. Your freedom number is not a fixed, immovable target. It is a living, breathing calculation entirely dependent on your physical environment. If you live in a high-cost city and your baseline expenses are $100,000 a year, your freedom number is $2.5 million. That is a massive, intimidating mountain to climb. Let's look at how this plays out between two people, James and Michael. Both men have worked hard for a decade and both have $500,000 saved in their investment accounts. James insists on staying in his expensive coastal city. His monthly expenses hover around $8,000. He feels hopelessly behind, knowing he needs nearly $2.5 million just to survive. He fully believes he will be working a high-stress job for the next 20 years. Michael decides to take a completely different path. He takes his exact same $500,000 portfolio and moves to a quiet, beautiful town in the Midwest, or perhaps even a lower-cost country abroad with a high quality of life. In this new, optimized environment, his living expenses plummet to just $20,000 a year. He buys a modest home outright and shops at local markets. The math doesn't lie. Because Michael's new baseline is $20,000 a year, his required freedom number drops to exactly $500,000. By simply crossing a state line or boarding an airplane, Michael went from being decades away from retirement to being financially independent overnight. He didn't earn a single extra dollar in salary. He just fundamentally changed the denominator of his life. This is where the most profound mindset shift of your financial journey occurs. We spend so much physical and emotional energy trying to infinitely scale the numerator, which is our income. We take on massive stress, work weekends, and battle for corporate promotions just to earn a little bit more money. But scaling the numerator is physically exhausting and heavily taxed by the government. Controlling the denominator, which is your daily cost of living, is entirely within your immediate control and is completely tax-free. Lowering your expenses by $20,000 a year is mathematically identical to earning a massive corporate raise, but it requires absolutely zero extra hours at the office. Geographic arbitrage is the ultimate weapon for shrinking that denominator down to a manageable size. You do not have to live in a concrete jungle that drains your wealth and your physical energy. You have the ultimate power to decouple your income from your location. When you realize that you can take your capital to a place where it is treated with respect, the world completely opens up. Wealth is what you don't see, and often it is the invisible freedom to pack your bags, leave the rat race behind, and design a beautiful life on your own terms. Here's the harsh truth. If your city is keeping you broke, your city is simply not worth your freedom. The greatest enemy of your freedom number isn't a low salary or a bad economy. The greatest enemy is the status game. We're biologically wired as humans to care deeply about our position in the social hierarchy. In the modern world, we no longer signal our status by our physical strength or hunting skills. We signal it through consumption. We buy luxury cars, oversized houses, and designer clothes to broadcast our success to the world. But playing this game comes with a devastating, hidden cost. When you finance a lifestyle specifically to impress other people, you're taking on what's known as social debt. Social debt is far more dangerous than traditional financial debt because it requires constant maintenance. The moment you buy a luxury car, you suddenly feel the need to buy clothes that match the prestige of the car. When you move into a wealthy neighborhood, you feel pressured to send your children to the same expensive private schools as your neighbors. It's a never-ending cycle of escalation. Here's the harsh truth. The status game is completely unwinnable. There will always be someone with a bigger house, a faster car, or a more prestigious job title. If you tie your happiness and your financial plan to being perceived as wealthy, you'll never be able to stop working. You'll be forced to trade your time indefinitely just to service the massive social debt you've accumulated. Every time you swipe a credit card to buy a status symbol, you're making a direct trade. You're trading a physical piece of your irreplaceable future time for a fleeting moment of social validation. You're literally selling the days of your life to people who don't even care about you. Once you realize this, the urge to show off completely evaporates. You begin to understand that true wealth is what you don't see. It's the unbought luxury car that translates into an extra decade of time freedom. This brings us to the ultimate tragedy of the traditional retirement script. Society tells us to delay all of our joy, all of our travel, and all of our passion until we're 65 years old. We're told to stockpile our money relentlessly, waiting for some magical golden era at the very end of our lives. But this ignores the fundamental reality of human biology. Time is the only truly non-renewable resource in the universe. You can always earn another dollar, but you can never earn another hour. As we age, our physical energy, our mobility, and our capacity for adventure steadily decline. A hiking trip through the mountains is a vastly different experience at age 35 than it is at age 75. When we delay our lives entirely for the future, we miss out on accumulating what's known as memory dividends. A memory dividend is the psychological joy and fulfillment you get from remembering a profound experience. Just like financial capital, these memories compound over time. An amazing trip taken with your children when they're young pays emotional dividends for the rest of your life. If you wait until you're 80 to start spending your money, you'll be completely bankrupt in memory dividends. You might have $10 million sitting in a bank account, but you'll have spent the best, most capable years of your life sitting in a cubicle. You'll have traded the vibrant, energetic seasons of your youth for a pile of paper you no longer have the physical stamina to enjoy. The math doesn't lie. The optimal human life isn't the one that ends with the highest possible net worth. The optimal life is the one that maximizes time freedom and minimizes future regret. You must realize that hoarding money endlessly is just as dangerous as spending it recklessly. Both behaviors stem from a deep misunderstanding of what money's actually for. To win this game, you must violently reject the status game. You must forgive yourself for not having the shiniest objects or the most prestigious address. When you stop caring about looking rich, you can finally focus the entirety of your energy on actually becoming free. We've covered the mathematics of escape, from the 4% rule to the incredible power of geographic arbitrage. But as you zoom out and look at the entire picture, you realize that the freedom number isn't actually about money at all. It's about existential life design. It's the deliberate, calculated process of buying back your own sovereignty in a world that desperately wants you to remain a dependent consumer. When you strip away the societal expectations and the endless marketing campaigns, you're left with a very profound realization. Wealth isn't a specific balance in your checking account, and it certainly isn't the collection of shiny objects sitting in your driveway. True wealth is the ability to wake up on a Tuesday morning without an alarm clock. It's the absolute, unshakable power to look at a calendar that belongs entirely to you, filled only with the people and the projects that you genuinely love. The highest dividend that money can possibly pay is the power to say no. When you've hit your crossover point, or even when you've reached Coast Fi, you're granted the ultimate veto power over your own existence. You can say no to a toxic boss. You can say no to a brutal daily commute. You can say no to missing your child's piano recital because of a mandatory corporate meeting. Money is simply the armor that protects you from the demands of the outside world. Many people are terrified of this concept. The societal script has conditioned us so heavily that we actually fear the idea of stopping. We're told that if we stop grinding, we'll lose our identity and fade into boredom. But the exact opposite is true. When you remove the mandatory requirement to trade your time for basic survival, you finally get the opportunity to meet your true self. You discover what you actually want to do with your hands and your mind when nobody is paying you to do it. The financial milestones we've discussed aren't just clever spreadsheet tricks. They're the mathematical equations for escape velocity. Every time you optimize your life, every time you choose to invest your capital instead of spending it on fleeting status, you're building the exact engine required to break free from the gravitational pull of the traditional rat race. You're choosing to front-load your sacrifice so that the entire second half of your life can be lived on your own terms. Think about the contrast one last time. There is a person sitting in grueling rush hour traffic, gripping the steering wheel of a $100,000 luxury car, feeling their blood pressure rise as they head to a job they despise just to make the monthly payment. Then, there is the person wearing a plain t-shirt, walking through a quiet park at 2 in the afternoon on a weekday, perfectly at peace because their modest life is fully funded by the silent engine of compound interest. The difference is so clear. The real flex is freedom. It isn't about proving to strangers that you've won the game. It's about quietly exiting the game entirely. As we've seen throughout this journey, wealth is what you don't see. It's the unbought luxury watch that translates into a 6-month sabbatical. It's the downsized house that buys back a decade of your youth. It's the invisible peace of mind that allows you to sleep deeply through the night. The ultimate goal of life isn't to arrive at the grave safely with the highest possible net worth. The goal is to spend your stored energy efficiently, maximizing your memory dividends and minimizing your regrets. Your freedom number is the key that unlocks that door. Once you calculate it, once you understand the math, and once you realize how completely attainable it is, the only thing left to do is start walking toward it. If this video opened your eyes or gave you a new perspective, hit that like button. Let me know in the comments what your ideal future actually looks like, and make sure to subscribe for more. Remember, wealth isn't just a number in a bank account, it's the freedom to design your own life.